Hello, everyone, and welcome to our discussion about what's going to be going on at COP28 in Dubai over the next week or so. My name's Tim Baines. I'm a partner in the environment team here at Mayer Brown London. I'm here with Oliver Williams in our finance team. And do follow us for the upcoming blog that we're going to do mid-COP, and also for our end of COP blog, which will come out in early next year.
Thanks, Tim. So is the Paris Agreement working, do you think?
I think the jury's still out for the time being. I guess the key thing to remember about the Paris Agreement is that states commit to limiting global temperature rises to 2 degrees above pre-industrial levels, try to keep the rise to 1.5 degrees. I think everybody acknowledges now that that's, at the moment, we're a long way off that, and probably that's going to be the outcome of that's definitely going to be the outcome of the global stocktake, which should be released this week at COP28.
And for those who don't know, how does the Paris Agreement actually operate?
So at its heart, there are lots of elements to the agreement, obviously, but at its heart, states submit NDCs, nationally determined contributions, setting out their plans and policies for emissions reductions. Those all get added up. And the idea is that those will be ratcheted up over time in line with the science. What we know is that at the moment, we're a long way from reaching the 2 degrees goal.
So what's been done to address this?
I think there are 5 really key elements of the discussions for me, both formal and sort of outside of the formal discussions. So a lot of the discussions will centre around the stocktake and what we've achieved so far. So the global stocktake is something that happens every 5 years. Under the Paris Agreement, we've got the first one that's going to be concluded this week. That's an opportunity for people to look at what progress has been made to date and what needs to be done in the future. The outcome of that should guide climate policy over the coming years, particularly in respect of the submission of future nationally determined contributions, NDCs. Second, I think phase out of fossil fuels. So this was a big agenda item at Glasgow. Eventually, the parties settled on phasing down fossil fuels. I think it looks like this year the parties are aiming towards phasing out of fossil fuel use that's unabated, abatement referring, of course, to carbon capture and storage or carbon capture and use. Tripling renewables, I think, is another significant theme of the discussions. We've seen that referenced by the US and China and by a couple of the international energy associations, the IEA and ARENA. And there seems to be a sort of a will, if you like, to put down some decision text in that kind of area. The US-China dynamics have shifted recently in terms of the relationship between those two parties as regards climate discussions. They also seem keen on renewables, but also China looks like it's going to commit to making reductions of other greenhouse gases than just CO2, which is an important change. China's a big emitter of methane. And private sector initiatives. So the COP28 presidency has been trying to get the private sector on board with making increased pledges to net zero. So those are sort of 5 things within and without the discussions that I think will be significant over the coming week or so.
You touched on a really important point there about the private sector, but most of what you've mentioned so far has been about governments. So, is this COP relevant to the private sector?
Yeah, absolutely. I think COPs have been very much relevant to the private sector over the last sort of few years. The dynamic has shifted much further away from it being a sort of place where formal negotiations take place to a place where the private sector meets as well. And obviously the private sector is affected significantly by the policies that are pushed down by governments. And we're seeing increasing numbers of emissions performance standards, of emissions trading schemes, renewables incentives, and new initiatives like carbon border adjustment mechanisms like the EU's. Those will be pushed down to private sector. And we're also seeing private sector increasingly calling for policy certainty when it comes to when it comes to climate-related matters. So the We Mean Business Coalition, for example, has published a letter signed by businesses with nearly $1 trillion in annual revenues, calling for effectively stricter climate regulation.
And will anyone from Mayor Brown be attending COP this year?
Well, not you and I, unfortunately, as you know, but Luis Becerra from our Rio and Sao Paulo offices will be there, and we'll be catching up with him during COP and also doing a podcast with him in the early new year.
And how can our listeners keep up to date with how COP progresses?
So keep an eye on our website, our ION ESG blog, and we'll put our blogs and our podcasts on there for people to access.